Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to give it a few seconds just to allow everyone to join, and then we'll make a start. I hope you've all been having a lovely day. I can see the sunshine's just come out as well, just in time for the webinar this afternoon. I hope you're all starting to wind down now. Lovely. Okay, I think we'll make a start. So really, I just want to say good afternoon and thank you so much for joining us for our second webinar of our Diversity and Inclusion webinar series. I'm not sure if you've joined us from the first one, but thank you for joining us and we hope you really enjoy the session this afternoon. We've got some brilliant speakers lined up to give you a bit of an insight to their career journeys, and then there'll be a talk at the end as well, talking really about a recruitment side of really talking about the imbalances that occur and everything. So before we do make a start, I'm just going to run through the house rules. I'm sure if you've attended one of our CIISec webinars before, you've probably seen this already. But just to let you know that you will be muted throughout today's webinar. But if you have any questions that you want to ask our speakers, which hopefully you do, if you could type those through to the Q&A box, which I think for you is at the bottom of your screen, we'll take those at the end. If you could also direct your question to a specific speaker, that would be really helpful for us chairing all the questions at the end. If it's a general question, then absolutely fine. We can also open that up to everybody. But if there is a specific answer you're looking for, then that would be really helpful if you could just indicate that to us. And then lastly, just to mention, as you can see there, you've got the support@ciisec.org email address. If you do face any issues today, hopefully you don't, but if you do, then please let us know and another member of our team will be able to pick that up for you. Right, now that we've covered the house rules and everything, I would like to hand you over to our MC today, which is Nina Payne. And if you joined us for the first session, you would have noticed how brilliant Nina is. Nina is actually one of our directors here at CIISec and has really kindly stood forward to MC the session this afternoon. I won't tell you too much because I know Nina is going to be telling you more about her journey really shortly. But we'll make a start. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Nina.
Thank you very much, Sophie, and good afternoon, everybody. And I think the sun is shining on the righteous today, everyone. So thank you for joining us. And I'm delighted to welcome such a group of illustrious both women and men leaders in their fields. So welcome Sarita, Lisa, Oanate, Melanie and Sarah. Thank you for spending some time with CIISec this afternoon. For those of you attending and listening today, it's a totally safe space. So you can ask any question that you'd like to ask us this afternoon. And that really is sort of a two-way process. So today we will say things that are our opinions, and we may not necessarily agree with everybody. And we may not necessarily think that we might have dealt with some of the issues that we face the same way. But I just wanted to declare our intent in sharing our experiences is very much coming from a place of wanting to support all of our colleagues within this wonderful career that we've chosen of information and cybersecurity. So if we disagree, let's have a discussion and let's have a debate. But when I've done these events before, having that safe space and hearing from individuals who have perhaps encountered quite abrasive circumstances and situations whereby I think many of us would never want to see ourselves in, and hearing about how they handled it has certainly given me food for thought about how to advise my colleagues if they experience the same things, and equally how I handle or might handle such situations myself if I found myself in them. So I hope that sets the intent. We'll have lots of time for questions at the end. So I will just jump straight to it, if I may, and turn to my slide where we talk a little bit about my career journey. And where better to start on sort of feminist girl power than the Spice Girls? My husband said, do you think that the CIISec membership are quite as old as you, Nina? And we'll remember the Spice Girls. And said, I think think I'm fairly safe in saying that even the young ones amongst the CIISec crew will at least know a little bit about the Spice Girls. But why have I said my career is a zig-a-zig-ah? Well, I think that's kind of what we really, really want, isn't it, ladies? We want a kind of career that is a work-life balance. And I don't limit that to just ladies. I also extend that to men as well, and all of those working parents, working carers, amongst both men and women. And so zig-a-zigs are, for me, I think my first point is probably to understand that your job is not really necessarily your life. So my job is definitely not my life. I don't define myself as part of my job. My family are incredibly important to me. I've got two relatively little ones. We've got a 10-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. And sometimes throughout my career, I've had to zigzag. So what I mean by that is sometimes you can accelerate, and sometimes actually you just have to steady the boat and just keep that career going at a steady pace. And I think of particular life events such as, you know, having those two lovely little children going off on maternity leave, and there was definitely a pause there. So took full maternity leaves under the UK sort of year off that I was lucky enough to get within the public sector. And I think for many of us who are, and I'd probably classify most of my colleagues that I know in information and cybersecurity, we're all driven because we're all passionate about it. And I think we've got to give ourselves permission sometimes just to say, actually, it's okay not to go at full pelt all the time in every single area of our lives and our job. So that would be my sort of first point. And if you can find a life partner who is going to be supportive in that zigzag journey, and perhaps who might be happy to zag whilst you're zigging and vice versa, so much the better. So that would be my first point. So let's go into a little bit about the Spice Girls. Baby Spice, well, I never thought I would do cyber. I did law at Oxford. I wanted to be a criminal lawyer protecting those wrongly accused in our society, and, you know, sort of going up there and making sure that the innocent were defended adequately. I then did a placement at a very big city law firm and realized actually that probably wasn't for me. So I completely changed tack and went to join the John Lewis Graduate Training Scheme. And why Sporty Spice is there is because they put you on the shop floor in the John Lewis Training Scheme. And you have to serve customers and manage teams. And a lot of those teams are probably not best pleased that some wet behind the ears Oxford Law graduate has come to manage their department. You know, what do they know about retail? So that taught me such a great deal about interpersonal skills and motivating teams. Sporty Spice, because I was in the electrical department, and I remember having to carry, I'm not joking, like 100 Hoovers up and down from the basement of John Lewis Oxford Street to the ground floor electrical department on a daily basis. So that was a sort of a test of resilience there. Scary Spice, I then moved over because I had a moment of I want to actually go into the public sector and see what I can do to sort of assist with serious organised crime. So the National Criminal Intelligence Service was all about serious organised crime. So Class A drugs, illegal immigration, what was then called e-crime, because anything to do with cyber sort of had an E on it back in the day. So I worked for the Director General for a number of years, and that was incredibly useful to learn from a senior individual. So I think the lesson learned there was, if you get that opportunity to essentially be an assistant to a very senior person, you can learn so much from them if you get the right partnership. and much of what I've learned from that Director General has stayed with me to this day. I then moved over to be the liaison, Ginger Spice wearing her iconic Union Jack outfit there, the liaison between the French and the UK law enforcement in Paris at the British Embassy. So again, there's no cyber coming through just yet, but that then led to a job where I had done relatively well in that job, got the performance that was sort of regarded as poor before I arrived to good, which doesn't sound, exceptional, but it was a couple of levels up from where it was. And then my boss at the time said, do you want to move over to this new world that's called cyber prevention? And there's this new department called the National Cybercrime Unit. It's bringing together the Met Police's e-crime unit and SOCA, the Serious Organised Crime Agency's e-crime unit. Again, it was in those days. And we're going to have a national cybercrime unit in the UK. Are you interested in joining? And I absolutely was. And my role there was to think about ways that are non-traditional, that we could actually sort of disrupt cybercrime, not through arrests. And that was a marvelous job in terms of innovation. So what I learned there was very much, you've got to try and innovate and do new things when you're facing a wicked problem like cybercrime. Spent a few years within that role, did a number of projects with other agencies within the UK who were building their cyber portfolios as well at the time. And then finally, I've ended up in banking. So I've come back to the private sector. I initially moved from I moved into Lloyd's Banking Group, where I did cyber intelligence, a bit of cyber strategy, did the group cyber strategy for Lloyd's Banking Group, did some regulatory work and some external partnerships work. And then finally, I've landed at Standard Chartered, where I do partnerships work, regulatory again, done some strategy work again. And then latterly, they've just added the gift that keeps on giving everybody, third-party security risk oversight has been added to my portfolio. So I think the messages from me today are, you don't have to have a cyber background. I just got CIISec last year. I think it's much more important to be able, once you get to a certain level, to be able to communicate to senior stakeholders and to translate some technical subjects into business language. I think that's absolutely vital. And I also think as a woman, it's really important not to limit yourself. So actually, there are so many bosses out there who are willing to, let you do flexible working, whatever suits you, because they know your value. And I think sometimes we doubt our own value as women. And so it's really important that we ask, we ask for what we think will support us in our lives to do this wonderful job. So I will stop there and I will hand over to Saritha, and I'll be fascinated to learn about Saritha's journey as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. What a wonderful start for the session. Hello, everybody. As Nina said, I am Saritha Arun Kumar, and I currently am working with IBM and have been with IBM for the last 18 years. So my journey has been a little bit different in comparison with Nina's. I started in a security firm itself. So when I graduated back in 2000, did my engineering, and my first job was, I was thrown into cryptography, PKI, encryption, none of it which I knew anything about. I had absolutely no idea what it was about, but that was my first job. So it was like a learning on the job. Every day I was starting to read about cryptography, think about what is all of this and how am I going to do the job. But after 3 years, it just so happened that things started coming naturally to me. I felt that security and me have some form of connection. So any new thing that's happening in security, I was out there to learn about it, to read about it, and to research about it and come up with new solutions on a daily basis, thinking about how I can solve problems for my clients thinking about what are the different security aspects that I can discuss with my clients every time I have a discussion with any clients, whatever sector that is. And I think that beginning of 2000 to 2003, where I started my security career, it's taken me all the way to 2021 today. And as Nina was saying, it's got me to a point where I'm now able to make those technical discussions, but also be able to translate those to those business discussions, get the leadership and stakeholders and C-suite thinking about why security is important and why security is not an afterthought. So a little bit about my journey from 2000 all the way to 2021. And as I do that, I'm going to talk about few things that I learned, few things that I experienced, which some of you might have experienced through your career journeys as well. So like I said, I started in the first security job, and in 2003, I wanted to move to a different company. And IBM had been a dream place to work for right from my school days, because a friend of mine had a fiance working in IBM, and he used to always talk about these cool stuff that he got to do in security, working on emerging technology, looking at new problems every day. And so it was a dream place for me to work in. And 2003, I got an offer from IBM, and it was like dream come true. And there's no looking back. As you see, I've been with the company for 18 years now. The highlight here for me is not just working for this great company, but it is the variety of stuff that I got to do with IBM. And just to name a little bit about what I've been doing. So I started as a security engineer. I then spent a few years working as a security consultant. So this was the time between 2005 to 2010 was the time where I was all over Europe. So 1 week Finland, 1 week Sweden, 1 week Switzerland. Every week was literally suitcases packed, living out of hotel rooms, coming back in the weekend, completely exhausted. My husband wants to go out. I'm completely exhausted. But he kept pushing me and said, this is great visibility for you. You're getting to work with different clients. You're getting to experience new things. You're getting to build your career. And so I went on. I did that for 5 years. It was great. I had moments during this experience of 5 years traveling across EMEA where I would be the only female in the room with full of C-suite execs trying to ask a lot of questions, and I would hesitate to raise my voice because I was unheard a lot of times, thinking that, oh, what does she know? She looks very young. What does she know about what she's talking? And eventually I realized that the more experience you have, the more examples you give, then your credibility increases. You can always talk about other customer scenarios without naming them, give examples, give experiences, and build your credibility by saying the right things. There were situations when I said, I don't know, but I'll have to come back to you. So saying I don't know to a client is fine. You don't have to always say yes or make up an answer right there and then. People value you more when you go back, do the research, come back with some answers for them. And that's how you build your reputation with the clients. And all these years, that's something that I've been really trying hard, is to be that trusted advisor to our clients, to our customers, and to build that credibility with them. So it's fine when things go wrong. It's fine when you don't know the answers. And that's what I have learned throughout my career. Few bits about education here and there. Like I said, I did my engineering and I wanted to do my master's. So I did it as part-time while I was working in IBM. And my dad always wanted to see a DR against my name, doctor. So it was kind of his dream, I'd say, which became my dream and my passion as well. So eventually I completed my PhD in 2016, which I started back in 2008, and I had to suspend it in between because in 2011 we had a beautiful son, and between 2005 and 10 I was always traveling, and in the weekends I was exhausted, so there was no time to plan for a family. But it was high time we wanted to plan for a family, and so in 2011 when my son was born, I decided that I need to continue the PhD, and I so eventually finished it in 2016. But something that I wanted to highlight here is there is no there's no age limit. You can get back to studies whenever you want. You can get back to doing your master's or your PhD, any sort of education at any point in your life. And there are certain times in your life where you have to prioritize on things. So I had to prioritize on certain things, step back at times. And there's always ways to come back and make up for things that you haven't been able to do. Like Nina said, I like the point that you said, it's this is not everything for you, right? Work is not everything for you. When you look at priorities, at certain points in life we have different priorities, and we need to make sure we are giving times for ourselves, for our families, and then of course think about work will always be there, but try and give time for yourself. Think about what is best for you. Along the way, make sure you have a lot of mentors, because in career mentors are very, very important. And having that relationship with mentors and going for guidance when you're in doubt, when you have a great set of mentors here. I'm looking at all the videos of everybody here, and these are great set of mentors as well. So feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we all will be more than happy. I see everybody nodding as well. All of us are going to be more than happy to help each other and guide each other, and guide you and give you inputs based on our experiences. So variety of experiences that I've done, from being an developer to an engineer to a consultant to an architect to a senior security architect, got to work on various innovation aspects, emerging technology areas. And in the last few months, I've been working as an executive security advisor, where I'm working very, very closely with clients, helping them be prepared for cyber attacks, be prepared for the cyber crisis, which is again a very important aspect of the whole cyber security, right? With COVID, cyber attacks are even more than before. So something that all our clients need to think about. So a common conversation anybody in security can have these days. So that's something that I'm doing, and I'm completely passionate about it. And security is an area for me where I'm always learning. I I still feel that I'm not 100% there. There's a lot more I can learn, lot more I can do. And I wake up every day feeling excited, and I like to challenge myself. And I think if you're thinking about a career, security is the career to think about. So with that said, I'm going to pass it on to our next amazing speaker. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarita. And I'm really conscious that in my enthusiasm, everybody, apologies. I think I banged on for a little bit too long, everybody. And I've eaten into our illustrious colleagues' time. So if I might ask, with my sincere apologies for being extremely hypocritical, if the remaining women and Oanate might stick to their time, unlike the epic fail that I am, I'd be extremely grateful to enable time for questions. Thank you. Over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
I will talk super quick. Hi, I'm Sarah, and my business is Layer 8. We're behaviour change, so most of my time doing programs. But yeah, a very different background for me as well. I remember at the age of 16 having that choice: do I go into a job, or do I go on the traditional routes of A-level? My plan, so I opted for A-levels. I think first geography, A-level geography lessons, 2 hours in, and we're only learning about how water and the leaf. I thought, if I do in this career, I'm never going to need to know this much information about the leaf. Which is when I went off and researched modern apprenticeships, started working for BT, and I think I applied because it was close to home, and B, it had the word marketing in it. I turned up on the first day, I realised I was actually the information awareness. And that's when I got this love of the human side of security and the question of how we can protect the organisation, not just through the technology, but the people as well. Working for a big global brand, I took every opportunity whilst I was there to pick up on the things that global business do. They helped fund a degree in communication psychology, and I was forever shadowing people, covering people when they were on maternity leave, and doing things that I was completely inexperienced to do, and very absolutely unpaid for. It was great because it was a learning opportunity. About 7 or 8 years down the line, I left and worked for a tiny business. I remember people saying, "You're completely mad, why are you going from this business that's got all this opportunity to basically a startup where you're working out of a living room?" I have to say, the best opportunity I had, there were so many more opportunities for me personally at a small organisation, allowing me to write strategies, to liaise with senior people, run awareness programmes for all sorts of organisations. Business grew, and I was able to grow along with it, from being the first project manager and eventually after 10 years being the managing director. But when it was time to leave, and I want to share a couple of kind of personal things with you, when it was time for me to leave, I just had my daughter, come back into my job as the MD far too quickly, because I just thought, yeah, you know, career is about getting back into work, anything that I'm, you know, need time off. I actually sort of hit this point where I was like, what do I do now? I want a career, just spend time with my daughter. I also got myself completely trapped in a financial situation that early career success had meant I got off and bought myself a lovely, beautiful house that came with it a lovely, not so beautiful, but big mortgage. Long story short, the best thing that I did was make the decision to, at 32, downsize, get rid of that burden. It allowed me to set up a business that I run today, Layer 8. And at that point, I had to relearn a lot of things. And I thought I knew behaviours and awareness. I had to learn how to run a business. I had to learn finance. I had to learn to speak up and not just hide behind people. Something that I found really, really difficult to be genuine in myself. Best piece of advice I think I got about moving from somebody else's organisation to my organisation is I have to spend time working on the business, not just in the business. So to round up very quickly on this point, 3 things that I think that I've learned I would like to share is, you know, there is not necessarily any traditional route. Some of the best decisions that I made, my A-levels, to go into a small business and to sell my house, which was sort of what I viewed as my career success, some of the best decisions that I ever made. Also, be able to take a positive from every opportunity. Some of the things that I did along the way that allowed me to learn were things that I wasn't paid to do, that I wasn't getting the recognition to do. Actually, they really helped me try things out, make stacks of mistakes, and then move forward. But also, I think when you are taking positives from the situation, recognise when it's getting too much and make the decision to change before you become sort of aggravated or annoyed about what's happening in the world. So,
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
And apologies, I know that a number of attendees had difficulties hearing Sarah.
Oh, I apologise, sorry.
Apologies for that. What we'll do is, I'm sure if you'd like to type, I caught most of it myself, but if you would like to type in any questions or any bits that you didn't particularly get, I'm sure Sarah will happily type back to you.
I should do that
in the Q&A. So apologies for that, everybody, and thank you very much, Sarah. Okie dokie. So Lisa, we're handing over to you, if we may.
Hi everyone. So completely agree with what Nina said at the beginning. I was talking to one of my colleagues this morning who was talking just around sort of her expectations of her career journey and, you know, it not necessarily being as linear as she wanted it to be. And I think, you know, I was talking around that they're not necessarily, you know, people's careers may appear from the outside to be more linear than they actually are on the inside. And I think everyone takes their own path. There's not like a right or a wrong. Everyone kind of wiggles around, gets different opportunities at different times. And I guess, you know, also the question came back is just, you know, well, what does success look like to you? And I think it's different for everyone. So, you know, I think I would say that, you know, I'd encourage you to think less about the destination of where you want to get to and more about the experience that you're going to get on the way. And what I would say is some of the most challenging projects that I've ever worked on in the past, I've actually learned the most from. So I began my career studying at Cardiff University. I studied information systems, so that's a bit of a mixture of computer science and business. And that might sound to you like, well, that's perfect for a career in cybersecurity. But the bit that I haven't told you is the year before that, I was actually studying an art foundation and was planning to go and do graphics design, and just realised in that year that it wasn't for me. And I realised that I wanted to focus on IT and systems. So I had a bit of a change of tact. So it definitely wasn't the perfect picture that it might seem. So after university, I then got a job with the Ministry of Defence, and essentially just landed in information assurance as it was at the time. A lot less sexy than cyber is now. And that was really focusing on networks and crypto usage within the Ministry of Defence. I worked on large-scale transformation programs, which were looking at a replacement of a number of different devices on lots and lots of different interesting platforms, and also helping them to develop and design an electronic key management system. If I was to tell myself when I got that job that I would have been doing all those things, I'd be like, really? How am I going to do all of that? I don't necessarily have all the background and the skills to do it. But you definitely learn so much along the way. You learn so much from others. I also joined research communities with some of our key allies on programs, then others from different countries. And I learned so much about some of the platforms, really, really interesting, I guess, quite niche comms and security requirements that the MOD has. And while I was there, I also did my MSc part-time at Royal Holloway, where I was looking, I guess, similarly, tapping into the knowledge that I'd built up on cryptography and how we'd move cryptography up the stack. After working at the MOD for 5 years, I then wanted to get a bit more exposure and experience outside. So I went to go work for another consultancy called MGT Security. And I wanted to get exposure in the private sector just to see how that differed. The MOD has some very, very, very niche requirements. And after MGT Security, I moved to Deloitte, and I spent the last 6 years working at Deloitte, currently working as a director and focusing on security transformations, predominantly in financial services. So the reason why I really love consulting, and similar to you, Sarita, is just because of the variety of work that you get. There's a huge amount of variety. We also get really great insight into what different organizations are doing and how that compares. And as I'm quite nosy, that sort of ticks that box. I like, being able to get under the covers and see what they're all doing. And I guess just to give you a couple of examples of sort of the type of work that I do, it could be anything from, working with an organisation that is acquiring another organisation to help them set up their security function and then helping them implement that, or working on large-scale digital transformation programs, so implementing that globally across some of our FS clients. In addition to that, I also lead our Women in Cyber initiative at Deloitte with one of my colleagues, where our aim is to increase gender diversity. And we do this in 3 ways. One is around inspiring the next generation. Second is around growing our people and how we really give them the right development and support. And third, it's around connecting others. So how do we make the right connections? How do we make sure that we're connecting with our clients, but also internally, building in the right communities? It's something I'm really, really passionate about, and really keen, I guess, from all of the speakers and all of you guys on this call, of how we can really, work together to make more of an impact. In addition, I had a little girl in the summer of 2019. So if I do have a visitor, probably not now, but maybe towards the end of this call, apologise in advance. Obviously, she's an absolute delight, but it's been a huge eye-opener just in terms of the amount of juggling, and also, definitely makes you realise that work isn't everything. To your point, Nina, just it's not everything, and your priorities do change. And then I guess just finally, I was thinking when I was creating, thinking about what I was going to talk around in my journey and kind of what I've done to date. And I was wondering, whether, you know, I've come from, some might say, a fairly technical background, but, you know, my work more is around translating, you know, some of the technical security considerations and how we kind of make them applicable for the business. And it made me wonder a little bit around how we sometimes put ourselves in buckets. We sometimes put ourselves in, you know, you're either technical or you're non-technical. And it made me think about, you know, is it that simple? Is it that black and white? And, you know, what about everything in between? And are we really helping, I guess, the industry and helping get more women in the industry by doing that? So on that note, you know, maybe it's something we can explore later. On that note, I will hand over to Mel.
Thanks, Lisa. That was fantastic. And we've arrived at Mel, and you know, I think we're gonna find this fascinating. You know, CEO of Bob's Business, which many of you will be very aware of. So over to you, Mel. Thank you.
Hi there, everybody. So Melanie Oldham, CEO and founder of Bob's Business, a cyber tech company that's been concentrating on the human side of cybersecurity. So again, interestingly, like the other ladies and those on the call today, I was looking back and thinking about my career journey, and I thought, okay, actually, I could probably start it when I was about 6 years old, when my grandparents used to take me over to the arcades in Skegness, and we used to go camping, and I used to sell the little shells that went around the toys that I used to collect back to the arcade for half a penny each, and I used to be really good with my money then. And then naturally, I kind of picked a lot of roles up in hospitality, tourism, and hotel management. So I actually did my degree in event management, hospitality, and tourism. Worked in a number of hotels for a number of years, and then went down to work in London doing event management. Then chose to take a little bit of a break, and what was supposed to be a 4-week holiday to Australia ended up turning up to a 12-month travel around Australia, Central America, and New Zealand. And I decided, that's it, I'm going to be a dive instructor. But before you can be a dive instructor and spend all your time on a beach just loving the fishing, you've kind of got to pay off the credit cards that you've racked up because you didn't realize you were going away. So that's when I fell back into hotels, and very quickly, in a really young age, managed to make my way up to a kind of a senior position within the hotel group. But there's only so much a 5'3" can do in heels for 15 hours a day. And I thought, okay, there's more to life, and having a bit of a social life. So I went to work for the Mid Yorkshire Chamber of Commerce, and was very much, again, doing training initiatives, people-based. And then one day the CEO came up to me and said, have you ever heard of information security? And this was in 2004. So this is when I realized, writing this presentation, this is making me really old. I had no understanding of information cybersecurity, and they dropped me, a very people-based person, into an IT team of 13 techies. And it was like the IT crowd. These guys had such, you know, impressive minds. And I was a little bit fearful. I felt a little bit stupid. But one of the problems that they had was trying to get the people within the organization to shift and change their behaviors, and how to influence them to stop creating the risks that they were doing. So that's when Bob was founded and created in 2004. And I used what I know, storytelling and animation, and just basically acting like a bit of a human API between the techies, the IT, and the end users, and sort of made a business out of it. Now Bob's Business delivers cyber education awareness training to organizations from, you know, 1 to 2 employee organizations, right the way up to 100,000 and beyond. And I think one of the biggest challenges there is when you start out with your own business and you're responsible for recruiting, initially your own unconscious biases make you recruit people a little bit like you. That was a disaster, you know, really, really great minds, and when it was good, it was great, and otherwise it was just chaotic. But what I've learned over those years is, by recruiting people from so many diverse backgrounds and with different views, different ages, different experiences, has really created a team that is so diverse but so capable and can achieve anything. The cloud represents all the other various different groups, associations, boards that I've picked up. So the Yorkshire Cybersecurity Cluster, the Business Resilience Centres, Cyber Growth Partnership, various different advisories to various different government schemes, and just getting my head around it. I'm terrible at saying no. I want to please people. So when people turn around and say, can you have a go at something? And I've always taken opportunities, and every time somebody said we give something a go, for me, it's been another learning opportunity. So at times over the last couple of years, as the load has got bigger, this cloud has got really grey and my mind just feels like it wants to explode and thinking, oh gosh, I've taken on more than I can chew. However, I can see that as a community, I know why I do this, because it's full with people with a passion, with a desire, and it's those human connections that make me want to actually work with groups outside of my immediate sort of working bubble. I used to hate the terminology women in cybersecurity. It used to make me cringe. I wanted to be a woman that was known for having a really good business, not because I'd got the success from being a woman in cybersecurity. However, my mindset has completely shifted because it's all those individuals that I've met over those years that have really influenced and changed and made me the person that I am. And it's those diverse people backgrounds that make me think, actually, the more diversity we can have in the industry, the more capable we're going to be, and the more chance we've actually got of securing, our national infrastructure and so on and so forth. But unlike what the others are saying, you kind of need to have that balance. For 17 years, I've lived, I've breathed work, passion about it, to the detriment of the two circles initially were going to represent the fact that I love people, but then I was like, oh my god, yeah, I've got to mention the kids. I've got a boy and a girl and they've come along with the ride and the journey with me, and for them, I absolutely, as a mother, am very passionate about them, but they know how to balance and have worked out how to balance with me and the work that I've been doing. But more recently, I've been on a couple of growth accelerator programs, the Cyber One, Lorca, Tech Nation, and we're talking about that equality and diversity thing. Is I have noticed I've got another COO in the organisation who is male, and we've both attended different pitches and investment rounds, and this element of bias around how people treat people differently and look at funding streams differently, I didn't believe in, because I've always gone out and sort of said I can actually do anything anybody else can do, but the results do show that it does have an impact and a difference. So I want to shift and change that and see what I can do to strengthen the industry and how more women can get more funding from sort of investment side. So I'm quite passionate about that. But my other passion, which I discovered in December of last year, is I needed to challenge myself. I needed to find something that would make my brain switch off, and I'm learning to skydive. 15 jumps in, and it is probably the one thing that I've learned that means I can't think of anything else. When you're falling from 15,000 feet, there isn't a great deal else you can actually think about. So I have found something that has meant Bob goes onto the shelf every now and again, and when it starts up back next week, I can't wait to it. But I still am really, really passionate about the industry and the people in it, and for that I'm really grateful for all the people I've met along the way. And that's me probably gone slightly over, so apologies.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you, Melanie, and a wonderful, inspirational diagram as well there that matched your speech there perfectly. So thank you. And the little skydiving Melanie, we like that in the corner there. Love it. We'll go straight over to Owen Arte, and I've just answered a question actually from Harry, which was a really great question around how best to show support and create an inclusive and diverse environment. And I think I've given my answer, but actually that's going to pale into insignificance when we compare it to Owen Arte. So Owen Arte, you have the floor, and we are all going to be listening very attentively as we try and create what you have created yourself. So thank you. Over to you.
Thanks for the introduction. I don't jump out of planes, by the way. I'm going to share my screen if that is okay. Just a slight amendment, if you can see that. I'm conscious of time, so I will make it as punchy as possible. So I'm Owen Arte, Best Man. I'm the founder of Best Man Solutions. On a day-to-day basis, I partner with technology and business leaders to identify security talent that meet specific skill sets, whether they be of a technical or business orientated capacity. So I feel like I stand at the precipice of gender diversity commitment, not just gender, but all aspects of diversity, because for a firm to be truly committed to diversity, they have to recruit a diverse workforce, or more accurately, they have to remove the barriers that are put in place that prevents them from recruiting a workforce that's reflective of their customer base. So in a nutshell, they need to back the talk, and nothing's more visceral than what that demographic actually looks like. So I was contacted last year, mid last year, by an old connection of mine who had become the CISO. Actually, I'll time this to make sure I'm on time. Who had become the CISO of an organization, and he was brought on board to implement a new target operating model for quite a immature security environment. So he conducted a skills gap analysis. And surprise, surprise, he didn't have the right people or enough people. His aim was to embed security both within the technical teams and the business teams to almost create a security by design. Now, the problem was that it was an immature environment in relation to his rather advanced target operating model. And the solution for this was the people. We devised that we needed to hire both technical and GRC, governance, risk and compliance individuals from governance and assurance, security architecture, DLP, identity and access management, and security engineering. How do we get there? Well, that's my job. The silhouettes here represent the actual genders of individuals within this role. Within the roles, and the question marks were the immediate hiring requirements. Everything without question marks, they could wait. But there was one particular position that was absolutely crucial, and this position came off the back of a bad audit. So it was quite critical to get this person in. And as he put it to me, look, we can't do anything else until we get this person in. I knew the person for this position. I said to him, look, she's absolutely ideal. We set up an interview, he hired her. And for these purposes, we'll call her Jane Doe. So when we were discussing this, how we work and prioritize these positions and how I create a program around it, he kept on coming back to Jane Doe. He kept on stating she's a breath of fresh air. Even when I was speaking to HR, oh, did you place Jane? Oh, she's a breath of fresh air, I tell you. She's different, she's just what we're looking for in the organization. So it struck me, well, there was an opportunity here, and the opportunity was to address the gender imbalance within IT and the legacy security department. And I can't take full credit to say, hey, I didn't say, hey, I've got an idea. We just came to this together. And the disclaimer is that while gender was the focus, it was all aspects of diversity. I've known him for a long time, and I've known him to work at very diverse firms in very diverse environments, and this wasn't one of them. So the new goal, my personal goal and business goal, was to provide the CISO with the means, the opportunity, and the platform to enable them to create a diverse security division. Now, just to set the picture, I've worked on these programs for a number of organizations, and I've seen it fail. And I've seen it fail because a lot of the times firms don't back their talk as much. So I was able to give them advice and learn from the mistakes of some of the other organizations. So there are 3 influencing factors when you're working a program like this. And I'll start by, how can I put it? The least influence is the recruiter. What I am is I diagnose the problem. I speak to the hiring manager about what the market is saying about their firm, what they're saying about their expectations on diversity. I relay this to the hiring manager, and then he relays this to either the C-suite, HR, something I class as culture, and that can be both tangible and intangible. And a lot of the times it's to do with policies in an organization, and it's a constant cycle, but it's really fraught with fragility. At any point, it could be a case of the computer says, no, I understand what you're saying, but we can't change this or that policy. So in order to meet the goal I set myself, I needed to quantify the actual problem. And I had the numbers right here. I had an idea of what positions I was most likely to fill with females and who to target. So the major problem of actually quantifying this issue, it wasn't applicable here. On top of that, another thing that I had to my advantage was that I had the ear of the hiring manager. The CISO was completely on board. Sometimes you work positions where it's a case of typically HR would say to you, I want a pool of candidates 30 to 50% female. I could go one step higher and set myself the goal of placing 50% of these candidates to be female, because I had complete buy-in, I had access to the hiring manager, I had his ear. Now, the challenges with this, one of the key challenges is that it wasn't a diverse environment. So how are we going to tell that story, paint the story? And so my strategy, my solution was, look, complete honesty. And one of the things that helped was that while it wasn't a diverse environment, it was inclusive. How do I know this? I know this from the CISO and the organization, in the conversations I had with him, but I also know it from my female contractor, Jane Doe, who was completely open with me as to what kind of environment it was. It wasn't diverse, but it was inclusive. And on top of that, their benefits package. You can tell a lot about the organization by the benefits packages in regards to how they view diversity and inclusion. These guys had flexible working hours, and this was initially designed around school runs. They had extended maternity and paternity. They had floating holidays, which has to do with if you wanted to take extra holiday for religious reasons, you had access to that. And they had remote working policy that was actually in place prior to COVID. So my solution was, look, I'm going to let these candidates know that complete honesty, this is not a diverse workforce, but they are aiming to get there. Because I'm a strong believer that when it comes to diversity, it's not necessarily a goal, it's a journey. You know, you need to keep on evolving on a constant basis. So let's just be completely transparent with them. Now, a problem came along once I started getting interviews, is that the names of the interviewers, they were all males. Every single person, with the exception of the very final stages within HR, were males. And I stated to the CISO, look, it's hard to paint that picture that we are striving for diversity and inclusion if we have the same people interviewing over and over again. And nothing bad to say about them, but there will be an element of unconscious bias in some of these interviews. We have the same people, we're going to get the same results, and it's not reflective of our goal for a more diverse and inclusive environment. So again, as a messenger, I relayed that to the hiring manager, and then the hiring manager actually relayed that to HR. Now, what was interesting here is that there wasn't anyone suitable to be involved in the early stages of the interview process. The only permanent person here was a junior member of staff. Hopefully, excuse me, oh, sorry, I went too far. Was a junior member of staff. Now, I suggested that we get my contractor in. However, their policy was that contractors shouldn't be hiring permanent members of staff. Contractors are contractors. I relayed that to the hiring manager. He then escalated that. And to the credit, they came back and completely in agreement. So they allowed my contractor to interview. And it's not a case of she interviewed just because she was a female. She had unique skills to identify particular technical talent as well as people skills. She was liaising with all the stakeholders. And this is where you need to be a little bit careful here in terms of who interviews who. You can't just have a female interviewing another female just for the sake of it. She must be qualified. I remember an interview I went to a few years ago. At first stage, I was umming and ahhing about them. This is myself. Second stage, they rolled out every single Black person in the organization to come and meet me, even people that had nothing to do with the role, people that I wouldn't be liaising with. And I knew what they were doing. There was nothing malicious in it. It was just to say, hey, we are inclusive and diverse. But it was cute, but it was clumsy. So we needed to make sure that it was approached in a tactful manner. So we got things moving in regards to this, and a few people were placed and the ball was rolling. Now, one of the hardest positions for any recruiter in security to work is that of enterprise security architect. And in this situation, they were looking for one with cloud certifications, 2 particular cloud certifications, someone that was TOGAF or potentially SABSA certified, someone that understood DevSecOps and could liaise with the development team. Top it all off, while this was a permanent position, they didn't want any former contractors because they had been stung before. So this individual, their whole career should be permanent. And they had to be an enterprise security architect. And not all security architects are enterprise security architects. So I sent him 3 profiles, blank. It's a case of, I'll get back to you towards the end of the week. As a recruiter, you are used to that, as frustrating as it is. I sent him 1 text message and he got back to me in 5 minutes. This was a text message straight away because he realized how unique that is. Now, this position was to fit in here within the IT team. Now, this is where the CISO's influence kind of ended. The IT team, or at least the infrastructure team, they required all of these skill sets. And in order for him to get the buy-in, we didn't have much flexibility. He needed to meet that criteria. When speaking to her, I spoke to her about the journey of enlightenment. She didn't bat an eyelid. I spoke to her about even where they were going as an organization. What really got her was the technology. And as soon as I mentioned the technology, her eyes lit up. I actually informed her that she's going to be working with an all-male team. Her exact response was, "Welcome to my world." And that's when I realized that I actually don't have a female architect. I have an architect, someone that was excited by the technology in the same way that a male applicant would be excited by the technology. So she's now in her 2nd month there, and all going well. Now, I realize I'm short for time, so I'll speed it up. In a nutshell, I didn't manage to fill 50% females, actually 75% females. Only 2 of the individuals there I placed were male. Now, this wasn't me consciously only trying to find females. It was a case of them removing certain barriers in place and being more open-minded. Now, while this story has an happy ending, it's certainly not the case in a lot of these assignments I work in. The typical scenario is that the hiring manager knows someone, the CISO, the CTO, the CIO know someone, and that's someone they know for the position or the positions. It's just like them. They come from their exact background. So again, we have a lack of diversity there. They're not prepared to put cash behind the initiative. If I'm looking for in this case, female security architect that happens to be female. Now, when she resigns or tells her boss that she wants to leave, they're going to counteroffer. If your only female developer or your only female coder wants to leave an organization, you as the manager reporting that up, you better do everything within your power to keep them, so then they get counteroffered. And you should be in a position to back your talk with money to say, all right, look, we'll come back and we will raise the stakes as necessary. And the most common one is too hard. It's too hard to change our policy. It's too hard to change our criteria. And such as the interview situation, these guys were able to change it, but many organizations I've dealt with, it just becomes a little bit too much of a hassle. So to conclude, I think the hero of this story is the CISO and the facilitators behind the scenes that will never get the credit. My female contractor, unbeknownst to her, she walked in there and she showed them what great can look like, and she was an ambassador for the cause. Now, diversity, and in this case, gender diversity, it's more than just a social responsibility. It's more than a nice to have, because it's got significant economic benefits to an organization. So I'm looking forward to the next chapter where we can address other aspects such as ethnicity disparities within leadership teams, and really create a positive and diverse working and inclusive workforce from the top down. Hope I didn't take up too long. 14 minutes, not too bad.
Renate, bang on, perfect. Thank you.
I will stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, Renate. That was fantastic, and thank you for sticking so perfectly to time. I think actually we've done a fairly good question, a good job in answering the questions. There is one question from an anonymous attendee that remains unanswered, and it's to Sarah, Melanie and Owenate. Could you please share a bit about key drivers for your choice to be an entrepreneur versus employee, and kindly share any stories behind how you named your companies? Melanie, shall we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the driver was the fact that actually I was always quite work obsessed anyway. So when I was a project manager, I was putting the hours in, and I was actually working for a training and development company, and I went on maternity leave with my son, and I was due for promotion, and the first promotion I didn't get when I was on maternity leave, and then I got made redundant. So I kind of fought it, so it put me in a bit of a case. So it was all settled outside, but it was one of those things that made me think I knew that I was the right candidate for that, but because of having my son, the situation was that, and I just thought, okay, I can carry on doing it, but the hobby that I'd sort of created, which was Bob in the background, I would just give it a go. So I carried on doing that whilst I had my son and my daughter, and it was an easy one to, if I'm honest, to fit around having, I say easy, it wasn't at all, having two children under the age of 2, but it meant that I could work the hours that I wanted to work, and it fitted around what I was doing. And then it was a slow burner for me, as opposed to looking at starting a company and putting it sort of 100% in. It was something that was there that I grew quite slowly and quite organically. And the behind the name, so all the characters, the original set of characters within Bob's Business were actually mirrored on people that I met within the industry. And so Robert was the very first information security consultant I kind of met, and he was very representative of IT at that time, and IT consultants. It was very grey suits and ties that he thought reflected his personality, which is why the tie remains in the brand. But the theory behind Bob's Business is Bob's Business, and the term that people use can apply to any business, so that every company and anybody can relate to the problems and the trials that Bob and his business and his colleagues sort of face. So that's sort of the background for my company and its name.
Thank you, Melanie. And Owenate, over to you, please, to answer those questions.
Sure, I'll answer quite quickly. I realized that recruitment is a very personality-based role and career. So when people sometimes associate the recruiter before the actual organization, and in my old firm, I was just dealing with contract positions. So I ran a contracts desk and contracts division. And at some point, my contractors would say, I want to go permanent. And then I would hand that relationship over, and they never quite got the kind of, I don't know, attention that they got from me, not to sound arrogant or anything like that. So I've always wanted to, I got tired of corporate meetings as well, more like a people person. And as for the name, Best Man is my surname, it's my mother's name. And anytime I used to walk into a meeting in the good old fashioned days when we used to go to the reception and sign in, and I'd spell out my first name because it's quite complicated for some people, and then surname Best Man, and they always looked up and smiled, oh, Best Man. So I wanted to put that in print. So quite simply, Best Man Solutions.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm conscious of Sarah, unfortunately, has had to leave to go and collect her children from school. So there's a living example of a work-life balance there. But we haven't got any more time. But of course, thank you to our speakers who have very kindly said that they're happy to answer a few questions offline. So if you have any burning questions that you'd like to put through, please don't hesitate to get those into CIISec, and we will endeavour to come back and answer any outstanding ones. But I think we've answered all of those that have popped in to the chat today. Actually, I've got one more, and Maheshi has been asking some great questions today. I think she's got one last one to end on, everybody. To all panelists, and perhaps we go to Lisa and Saritha, if we may. What's your daily motivation mantra? And your one motivation tip, Lisa and Saritha? Shall we kick off with you, Saritha?
Yeah, I can go first. So my motivation and mantra every day is keep smiling and breathe.
I think that's so short, but that I think I can see everybody nodding there. they're so in agreement. Thank you, Sarita. Lisa, over to you.
I would just add and say, I mean, I think just make sure you enjoy what you do every day, and I think let that lead you on the path that you want to take.
Thank you very much, Lisa and Sarita. So we will make those slides available to the anonymous questioner who asked that, and we've got a whole series of inclusion and diversity webinars coming up in the course of 2021. Please carry on joining us. We're delighted to exchange views with you. And if we can improve in any way, and anything from today's session that you think you'd like to offer us some constructive feedback on, please don't hesitate to reach out to CIISec, and we will consider it very, very carefully. So thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to Sophie and to Shona for organising everything. And thank you today to the attendees for listening so attentively. Have a nice evening, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.